many times people reach your 50s and 60s where it's at that point where we're going to retire and our sense of purpose has been our job. And when somebody says, what do you do? It's all about our job. It has nothing to do about what we do, who we are. That doesn't always describe who we are. And so I think that having that sense of purpose and allowing that flexibility in our minds for that sense of purpose to change over time is really important.
Welcome to the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. I'm your host, Kavita, and the founder of Power Purpose Play, a global community of women in midlife. I'm here to tell you that it's your time now to rediscover what has always been inside of you and bring that out into the world. If you're wondering what's next, but don't know quite what that is, or if you feel a twinge in your heart telling you that you have so much more to do and so much more to offer, you're in the right place. Ask yourself, if not now, when? Do you want to leave your job, start your own business, take control of your health, reignite the passion in your marriage, write that book, or at least that first chapter? Transitions like this can be daunting, but through listening to my story and interviews with incredible women every week, I hope to inspire you to take action. I rediscovered myself after the age of 50, and I know you can too. It's my time now to help you do just that. I'm so excited you're here. Let's dive in. Hi, my friend, and welcome to another episode of the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. Before we begin, I'm thrilled to announce that the doors to my next group coaching program are open. If you're a woman who is going through a career or life transition and are wondering what's next, this program is for you. Join me and a maximum of 20 like-minded women for a 6-week transformational program where we will begin to answer the questions, who am I? What do I really want? And how do I get there? This program is complete with comprehensive tools, templates, videos, and accountability to help you take concrete action towards your next stage. Click the link in the show notes for more information and to register. If you'd like more information, send me an email at kavita@itsmytimenowcoaching.com. The program starts the week of September 18th for 6 weeks of learning, growth, and transformation. Reach out to me today or register in the links in the show notes. It's hard to believe we're in the last few weeks of August. How has your summer been so far? We just got back from 2 weeks in Italy and Spain, and it was absolutely amazing. Not only because we enjoyed the breathtaking scenery and food and beautiful people in Sardinia, Italy, and Tuscany, and Valencia in Spain, but mainly because we were able to spend some quality time with our 2 grown sons. It's interesting, isn't it? If you have children, you'll know what I'm talking about. They seem to grow in an instant, and now they are young and wonderful men. It's a different kind of relationship that develops as they become adults, isn't it? I was so grateful to have this time to rest and rejuvenate because I feel like I have so much more ahead of me to do and to be. I recently shared a post on LinkedIn about a day I spent alone in Valencia and a night when I went to a flamenco show by myself. I learned so much about myself and how important it is to follow our passions. I thought I'd read the article that I wrote about that evening and that day so you can get an idea of what I mean. So here goes. Such lessons learned from today. The first time I've actually been alone traveling by myself in a big city. First, I was trepidatious. How was I going to manage this? My whole life, I have been accustomed to being taken care of by my mom and dad, now my husband, and to some extent, even my grown boys. It's a wonderful feeling to be looked after, to be cared for. But when you venture into an environment you're not used to, it's a whole other story. I spent a day in Valencia, Spain, by myself. You may think that's no big deal, but for me, it was. I learned to trust myself. I learned not to conform to the shackles of everyday processes. I slept in. I did yoga. I meditated. I asked my inner self, What is the path of least resistance to the abundance that is already there for me? I took a leisurely shower. I went for a beautiful brunch by myself. I read a wonderful novel I picked up at a local bookstore. I people watched. I soaked up the sun. Then I got realistic. I need water and wine. So I went to the local store amidst the droves of hostile youths from countries far and wide. I avoided them and reveled in the history and architecture of centuries gone by. I came back to my air-conditioned sanctuary amidst the hot, smelly, humid, yet beautiful city which is Valencia. What was I to do? I wasn't used to planning an evening all to myself, with no family, friends, or acquaintances around me. Then my son, why didn't you go to see the flamenco dancers you've always loved, Mom? Me? By myself in a bar? Me? Why not? So I did. I got dressed up, beautiful flowing silk dress, making sure everything was in order. Started walking to the show. No idea where I was going or what I would experience. Started off, Google Maps in tow, ready to conquer my fears. The walk there, off the beaten path. Was I safe? Feeling a little hesitation. This is ridiculous. I should go back. Then the realization hit me. How we conform to the beliefs of a certain type, a certain community, a certain way of being. I became freer, less guarded. Arrived at the club. Flamenco? Yes, I said sheepishly. For one. Led into a warm and inviting space of creativity and love. I became freer, less guarded. Are you alone? The waitress asked. Yes, you see, my sons are traveling but are coming tomorrow and encouraged me to come. I was hesitant at first, but here I am. No worries, señorita. Many women come here on their own. Settling in, I became freer, less guarded. Then the music began. The Spanish guitarist, the soulful wailing of the Spanish singers who seemed to be in a trance as they sang their songs, so romantic and dramatic and sexy and passionate songs. Oh my God, I realized then, looking at the expressions of first the guitar player and then the singers and the dancers who seemed to be possessed with some kind of rapture. It hit me then. You don't have to know what you're good at. You just have to feel it. I had never experienced such passion in the craft before me, such dedication and love for one's life work. Faces squeezed in every direction, this and that, as they played, sang, danced, and gave their passions on the floor. I realized then and there, this is what I want. And this is what we should all have. Passion so overwhelming that our faces get contorted. We don't care about how we look or what others will think. So confident in the excellence in our craft that we don't give a crap what anyone thinks. This is what we all need to experience every day. If we are not coming close, we are not really living. I want this for you, and I want this for me. Our world would thrive, expand, be whole and wholesome. If we all pursued our passions like the flamenco dancers and singers did that night in Valencia, the night on my own, where I learned so much, where I became freer, less guarded. I hope you enjoyed that. And remember, if you are looking to find out what your passions are, join me for a transformational group coaching program this fall. If not now, then when? This week's podcast interview follows along the same vein as finding your passions. It's about living a life well lived. Enjoy this next episode with Sky Bergman, and I'll see you at the end with the key takeaways. Welcome, everyone, to the Midlife Reinvention Podcast, a podcast for women in transition in their careers and life. I'm your host, Kavita Ahuja, and my goal with this podcast is to inspire you to realize your true inner power and potential, and to help you unleash all that resides within you and bring it out into the world with confidence. If you may be going through transitions in your career or your life and are wondering what's next, I'm here to tell you that you can do this. And I want you to believe and say with confidence, it's my time now. To this end, I interview incredible women for this podcast who will share their stories of reinvention and who will give you their advice on how to overcome the obstacles in your way to reach your vision for yourself in the next stage of life. This week, I am very honored to have on the show Sky Bergman. Sky is an accomplished, award-winning photographer. Lives Well Lived, Sky's directorial debut, is currently airing on PBS and is available on Amazon, iTunes, and Canopy. Her fine artwork is included in permanent collections in the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, Brooklyn Museum, Seattle Art Museum, Santa Barbara Museum of Art, and the Bibliothèque Nationale de France. Her commercial work has appeared on book covers for Random House and Farrar, magazine spreads in Smithsonian, Arthur Farmer's Budget Travel, Reader's Digest, and Archaeology Odyssey. If that's not enough, Sky Bergman is a professor emeritus of photography and video and a former chair of the art and design department at Cal Poly State University in San Luis Obispo, California. She has 2 short films about intergenerational connections currently on the film festival circuit and is working on a feature-length film that is a celebration of love. Sky was recently named a Co-Generate Innovation Fellow, joining an impressive group of 14 other social entrepreneurs with co-generation solutions to today's biggest problems. These 15 inspiring social entrepreneurs bring older and younger people together to address racial inequality, climate change, social isolation, and more. Wow, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast, Sky, and obviously your background speaks for itself. So I'm just really pleased to have you here.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be here. It's an honor.
Thank you. Yes. So Sky, as I was reading in your bio, I'm just really curious. I'm always curious as to how people get started and what they're doing today and how do they get started doing that. So maybe you can tell us, our audience, a little bit about how you got into photography and filmmaking.
Sure.
And also, Why does visual arts, why is that a passion for you? And did it develop at a young age, or was it something that you acquired over time?
Well, I appreciate that. I like to say that I grew up with a camera in my hands, and I think that I did. I have a picture of me when I was about 4 or 5 years old with a camera, and
oh, really? Okay.
I was always interested in visual arts. And my dad photographed all the time, and had a darkroom in our house. Not that I got to use it very much, but I at least knew it was there and got to come in every once in a while. And I think I kind of put that aside. I'm also a musician. I play a number of instruments, and ranging from bassoon to flute to guitar to clarinet. So I love arts in all forms. But when I went to college, I thought, I better do something that my parents expect me to do. And so I actually have an undergraduate degree in finance. And while I was at school, my last semester,
okay.
I took a photo class just for fun, my last semester. And that was it. I fell in love with it, and it rekindled my joy of the visual arts. And I just said to my teacher at the time, who I'm still friends with to this day, I love being in the darkroom. I love this environment. I want to be a university professor and teach photography. How do I do that? And thankfully, he took me under his wing, and that was my passion. I decided to, even though I was good with numbers, that was not something that made me happy, and that I didn't want to spend my life settling, that I really wanted to do something that was going to make me happy. And the magic of watching an image emerge from the developer in the darkroom was just something that it was amazing to me. And I just set about, instead of saying why, I would say why not, and just have always from that moment on followed my passion, and also realized that I had this idea that I thought my parents wanted me to do something that they really just wanted me to be happy. And I'm so glad that I realized that in my early 20s. And it really freed the rest of my life up to follow my passion and my sense of curiosity.
Wow, that's amazing. That's such a great great. So firstly, I didn't know that you had an undergrad degree in finance. That's so,
Yeah.
and I love that because that's true. I mean, a lot of us, especially around this age, at middle age, 50s and plus, like we've always kind of done things that we think are expected of us, right? And I know I did, but not, and I don't think our parents or our families have anything negative. I think that's just for our own good, right? But good for you for following your passions and going for it. And look where it's brought you now. I mean, and
Yeah.
I love that. Why not?
Right.
That's what I really encourage. I mean, that's one of the reasons I do this is because I encourage people who are listening to follow their passions. It's you just don't never know what's going to happen when you do. So that's fantastic. I've never actually been in a dark room. Can you believe that? So,
Wow.
yeah.
It's pretty magical. I've spent a
Yeah.
lot of time in dark
Yes.
rooms.
That's great. Yeah. So wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. I just wanted to move on to your documentary you can see in the background there. I love it. So I love that visual. So your documentary Lives Well Lived and celebrating the secrets, wit, and wisdom of age is absolutely phenomenal. I had a chance to watch it, and I understand the idea of it came from your grandmother and
Yes.
listening to her, your Italian grandmother, her name is Evelyn, listening to her stories of her life stories. And so tell us a little bit about that and what sparked that curiosity to start the project.
Yeah, sure. So I should say, up until the point that I worked on this film, I was just a still photographer. Not just, but I was a still photographer. I'd never done any video, any filmmaking. And my grandmother, when she was 96, she came out to visit me for the first time in California. She lived in Florida. And she spent the month of August with me, which if you've ever been to Florida, it's a great time to get out of Florida. And she was an amazing cook. And we would go to the farmer's market on Thursday night and cook all day on Friday. And it was just such a wonderful gift. And I grew up in my grandmother's kitchen. I lived with my grandparents and I grew up with her. And that was always where the best stories came out and the love. I mean, that was just our way of connecting. And so when she was out here, she came out for 4 summers in a row starting from that first trip when she was 96. And so I thought I'd better film her cooking because she never wrote a recipe down, just like any good cook. They all have it up in their mind. They don't write anything down. And I thought, I don't just want to write the recipe down. I want to hear her voice. I want to see her gestures. I want to remember this feeling in a very different way. And that was really my first foray into filmmaking, was filming my grandmother in the kitchen because I wanted to capture those memories. And then when she was turning 100, I went back with her to Florida for her big party. And she was still working out at the gym at the time. And I should say,
I saw that. That's amazing.
Yeah. She did not start working out until she was 80. So it is never too late to start something new. And that was definitely something she absolutely loved, being at the gym and working out and that socialization and being around all those people. And I thought I'd better film her because she was such an inspiration to me at times when I thought I don't want to get up and go work out or do my yoga practice. I would think of my grandmother at the gym and then I would get my butt moving and get in gear.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I filmed her, and just as a throwaway comment, I said, "Hey, Grandma, can you give me some words of wisdom?" And she said things like, "Be kind and live life to the limits." And I just thought, there is a film here. Like all I'm seeing in the media, I was looking at approaching 50. And I think that half century mark is a big mark, especially for women. We tend to think that what are we going to do with the rest of our lives? A lot of times if we've had kids, they're grown, they're out of the house, our careers are maybe in flux at that moment. We're rethinking everything. And I was certainly part of that. And looking at my grandmother, who was 100 and still living a very full, wonderful life, and wanting to find other role models out there like her. I just wasn't seeing that in the media at all. And I think that's changed, thankfully, in the last 10 years. But this was 10 years ago. And all I was seeing was everything that we could do to avoid aging, the anti-aging creams, everything to stay youthful. And let's face it, the one thing we all have in common is that we age every day.
Yes,
so
we can't get around that, right?
Right? We should celebrate our aging. And so I came back from that trip and I put together a little 1-minute video clip of my grandmother at the gym. And I sent out an email blast to all my friends, family, and all the alum I've taught over the years I've been at the university. And I said, "Hey, I have this idea for a project." I didn't know I was going to do a film at that point. I said, here's a little clip of my grandmother at the gym. And if you have somebody in your life that's as much an inspiration as my grandmother is to me, then please nominate them. And I was inundated by heartwarming nominations. And that was it. I spent the next 4 years interviewing 40 people with a collective life experience of 3,000 years and put the film together. Yeah.
How wonderful. And I agree with, I mean, it's so interesting because when I saw the video and she was so cute actually and so inspiring. And it made me actually think of my mom because when you said that she was a great cook and so is my mom, right? And she's an Indian cook, right? But the same thing, like all the kids are like, Nani, like we got to find out she doesn't have any recipes. So they did an online cookbook, very similar to your grandma, but that was such a great idea. And it's true. If we don't capture those moments and that wisdom that we have from the elderly or older people, that it kind of dies with us. You know what I mean? So like, it's so important to have that live on and to have those experiences be shared. So fantastic. And she was 100. How old was she when she passed?
She was 103 and a half. She lived long enough to come out from Florida to California for a sneak preview of the film. It was held in a theater that held 850 people, sold out, and 27 of the 40 people that were film stars in the film that I had interviewed were there that night. And my grandmother meted and greeted every person that came through the theater. She was definitely the proud grandmother, and that was like the best night of my life. And she passed away 6 weeks later. There's nothing wrong with her. She just said, I'm done. And she stopped eating and drinking and she was gone in 2 days. And my mom says that she lived long enough to be able to see the film on the big screen, to see it come to fruition. And I think that there's some truth to that. And it was what an honor and a gift that she gave me that she was there for that night. It was truly amazing. Yeah.
Oh, I just got the chills when he said that. That must have been such a special, beautiful evening. And so, like you said,
it was
the best night of yes. How wonderful. So thanks for that. That's sharing that. It's such a great story. And there's some of the quotes in the film that I noted is one of them was, we all have a story to tell if you just take the time to listen. Right. And I believe in that because that's why I do this podcast is I share other women's stories so that it's inspiration for those listening. And I think you mentioned we talked a little bit about women, especially in midlife at this age. And we often don't take the time to celebrate our stories ourselves. And that's what I encourage women. That's one of the reasons I'm doing this. And so what would you say? If from your experience, from your life or from your filmmaking, what would you say to women who kind of don't follow their passions and hesitate because they're afraid or they're held back by some fears or something else?
Well, one of the things that I have on my bulletin board that I try and live by is that your decisions should be based on your curiosity over fear. And I think that a lot of times I know when I'm stuck, it's out of fear. And I really try and look at that and think, what am I fearful about? What is the worst that could happen? And what's the best that happens if I follow my curiosity? And so I think that that's something to keep in mind, is that you want to follow your sense of passion and curiosity, because I know that even if it hasn't gone exactly the way that I had hoped, at least I know I followed my passion and I never regret it. I live life with very few regrets, if any. And I think that that's because I follow that sense of curiosity. And that's hard to do. Easy to say, but I know a lot harder to do. I always look at one of the things that I really have lived my life thinking is I don't let money be the obstacle that keeps me from doing something. If I had, I would never have switched from finance to photography. I mean, who's going to make a living doing photography when I could be a stockbroker, right? Yeah. And I think that as long as you have enough money to live, then I think that beyond that money should not be the obstacle that keeps you from doing something. There's always creative ways around things. For example, when I decided that I was going to make this film, I had never made a film before. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to make it happen, but I knew I had to. And I applied for several grants. I spent all this time applying for grants and not getting anything because at that point, nobody was funding something about a film about old people. I mean, that's really the way people were seeing it, not a film about resilience or wisdom. It was really, it was unfortunate. But I still knew I had to make the film, and I made sure I paid everyone that worked for me on the film because it was my passion, not theirs. So I got creative in terms of figuring out how I could make money, which is I do Airbnb in my house, and I started renting out rooms in my house. And I realized that that was a great way to fundraise because everybody that stayed, I would tell them, hey, your money is going towards this film. They became a tribe of people who wanted the film to succeed, who helped me out, who spread the word, who went to film festivals all over the country and helped get say, oh, this is an amazing film. You should see it. And so in getting creative about how I funded it, I also, it became this wonderful creative experiment and helping to spread the word about the film as well. So sometimes it seems like you're up against an obstacle. How can you make that obstacle a challenge instead of an obstacle? How do we reframe the way that we look at things so that it becomes a joy to work on them rather than a burden?
So true. I love that. How to, based on curiosity over fear. That is so important because we don't want to miss those things in our life that inside that they tell us. I have this little voice that always kind of guides me. And I usually listen to it. And initially it was hard because you think, oh, well, like you said, I don't know if I can do it. Look at you. I mean, you never had made a film before, and how creative you came up with finding ways to fund it. So such a great example. And I really truly wish that more women especially followed that instinct and weren't afraid of the things that might get in their way, because there's always ways to get around that. So wow, that's a good idea about Airbnb too. So, and it's fun too, right?
It's been great.
Yeah, fantastic. So the title of the film, Lives Well Lived, that was one of the questions you posed to, I guess, the actors in the, I don't know, you call them actors? Or yeah.
I call them film stars. I like to elevate them to film stars.
Okay. And so I love some of the answers that they gave. So one of them, like I'll share some of them. So what does it mean to have a life well lived? Being endlessly engaged in whatever your passion is, to be content in your own skin, and to be very self-accepting. And the third one I noted was to learn new skills and never get in a rut. So I love all these, and we kind of touched on that, especially the passion piece. But if I was to ask you, Sky, what is your definition of a life well lived?
Hi, my friend. Kavita here. Do you often feel blocked from moving forward? We all feel that way at times. These are referred to as energy blocks. I've created a short, actionable PDF guide to help you release your negative energy blocks. Click the link in the description to download it now for free. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, well, I think that I would borrow a bit from my grandmother, which is a life well lived to me means always being kind. It's always, if you're kind and you treat other people the way you would want to be treated, then it's amazing what doors open up and how your life unfolds when you live a life of kindness. And so I think a life well lived is just being kind.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. It's simple, but it's true, right? And you certainly are.
Simple is the best way.
Yes, that's right.
What do they have? Yes. It's keep it simple, stupid. And I think that there's some truth to that.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, people forget that kindness is so important. Like, it's amazing to be some people and, come across people who are just mean. And it's like, why are you like that?
Well, I'll give you an example, which is when my dad had a stroke a number of years ago. He's since passed away, but after he had his stroke about 10 years ago, he was really obviously in a rut. He couldn't use his left side very well. And he was in a place a rehab place. And I said to him, he was in Philadelphia and I'm here in California. I went to visit him and I said, I will come back next week if you have a better attitude. And I want you, when somebody comes into your room to help you, I want you to say something nice about them. I don't care if it's like, wow, your shoes look really great or you have a beautiful necklace on. It is amazing when you say a kind word to somebody,
Yes.
how it brightens their day. I said, and then your interaction with them will be so much better. And I will tell you, he practiced that for a week. And when I came back the next week, he was like a different person because he felt better. He was giving out kindness, and people in return were working with him with kindness and love. And so I think if we're that's why I say you don't never know. And it may not come back from the same person that you're giving the kindness to, but it just lightens everything. I mean, it's such a beautiful thing. Like this morning you came on and you said, wow, that necklace is really beautiful. Well, it made me feel great inside, right? It's a small comment. It didn't have to do much to make me feel better. And so doing those small, it doesn't have to be a big act, but just a little bit of kindness goes a long way.
It just creates positive energy, right?
Yeah.
It just creates this connection and positive energy. So I totally believe that. It's so great. Mm-hmm. So as I was watching the film, I noted it's just unbelievable to me what some of these people had gone through in their lives. I mean, they've lived long lives, but from the war, being torn away from their parents and from the camps that they had to endure, and all these obstacles that I think nowadays, like some of the things that we go, it's pales in comparison, maybe, But then they went around and they got through all of that, and there's painters and quilters and yoga instructors, and this wonderful gentleman who makes cheese mozzarella balls. And I just love it because it just shows how, despite like the extreme obstacles that we face, we can turn our lives around. And so I guess a similar type of question is, what have you learned from them and about having faced these obstacles and having gone through it and turned around the other side?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that their stories of resilience really resonated with me. It was their inner strength to keep going in the midst of great challenges. And I think that the person who really impacted me the most in terms of what she said about that was Evie Justison, who talked about reading Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. And the thing that she got from that book is that there are so many times when, and I should preface this for those of you that haven't read the book, he was a Holocaust survivor. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that he noticed was that he could not predict who is going to survive. It wasn't based on physical strength. It was really based on emotional strength. And what she got from the book, really, that she took away, that she has imparted on me now, is that there are so many times in our lives when we can't control the things that are happening around us, but what we can control is our attitude about how we deal with those things. And I think attitude is so important. And that was important across the board in everyone that I interviewed, was having a positive attitude. And in the moment, it's hard, but I think as you reflect, it's not just in the moment, but it's also how you reflect back on the things that you lived through and how you can learn from those experiences and move forward. And let's face it, we all had a moment in time in this last number of years that we could not control what was happening with the pandemic. And it was really our attitude about how we dealt with those things and how we dealt with the isolation. And some people got on Zoom groups and did things, and other people really had a hard time. And so I think, and needed help. And I think attitude is really plays a very big part in that. And I think the other thing is the three things that everybody had in common, which one of them I think goes right to the heart of the isolation of the pandemic, was that everyone had a good support system, whether it was family or friends. It didn't necessarily have to be family. It could be friends. And I think we all need that support system. Even when we can't necessarily gather in person, we still need to feel like we can call somebody and have somebody at the other end of the phone that we can talk to when we're down and we have troubles, or when we're up and we want to share positive news. It works in both directions. We need that support system. And then I think the other thing was that they all had a sense of purpose, and that purpose, as I learned, can change over time. So when you're young, it might be one sense of purpose, and in middle age, another, and then in older age, another. But all of the people in the film had a sense of purpose, whether it was, like you mentioned, my friend Lucky Louie making mozzarellas every morning for his daughter's deli, or Rose Albano Ballestero, who gets up and teaches ESL every morning because English was her second language, or Paul and Marion Wolf, who talk about their experience during the Holocaust to high school students, whatever it is, all the people had some sense of purpose that they had. And for me, that was really important as I was looking at retiring from teaching. And what was my sense of purpose going to be? How was that going to morph and change? Because I think that many times people reach your 50s and 60s where it's at that point where we're going to retire and our sense of purpose has been our job. And when somebody says, what do you do? It's all about our job. It has nothing to do about what we do, who we are. That doesn't always describe who we are. And so I think that having that sense of purpose and allowing that flexibility in our minds for that sense of purpose to change over time is really important. And then I think lastly is the people in the film all had that sense of resilience and that sense of a positive attitude and being able to look at the glass being half full rather than half empty, which is such a cliche, but so true. I mean, I think
so true.
that I have learned from them in that there are times when we all wake up and we on the wrong side of the bed and things go wrong. When you have like multiple things that go wrong, you're just like, oh my God. And I really take a moment to pause and give myself an attitude adjustment and just say, okay, I need to just breathe for a moment. How can I reframe what's happened? How can I look at the positive side of this? And how can I change my attitude to make this day a better day? And I would never have done that before if it wasn't for the film and for all those people that I interviewed. And they're in my consciousness now.
I see how you're so buoyed by it. Like when you talk, your energy is so palpable. And I believe that attitude is, and it starts from the thoughts that we think, right? If we think the negative thoughts and we think back and say, oh my God, that was horrible. Or if we think, what could I learn from that? And then that changes, the thoughts change our attitude and therefore our actions, right? And again, learning from the experience, a good support system, so important. And yeah, some of us, during the pandemic, we did reach out but some people didn't, so that they had a hard time, right? And then I love the sense of purpose piece, and that's one of the things I really encourage when I'm working with my clients. And you've heard of Ikigai, right? The reason for being, and that's really what it is. It doesn't have to necessarily be the job that you do. It's about your strengths, and it's about your passions. It's about your values, and what can you do, or how do you lead your life with that reason for being or sense of purpose? And I got that when I watched the film, because and it seems so positive despite everything. It's just so inspiring, and the resilience, of course, is really important. So those are great tips, and I think that's something that we all should try to do in our lives. It is hard, but the more like I think it just starts from the thoughts, right? You can catch yourself. Why am I thinking negative? Let's change the attitude. So wonderful. So I was going to ask you as well. So in the intro, I mentioned that you are a Co-Generate Innovation Fellow. And so for those of us who don't know what that is and what that means, could you kind of tell us what you do and what are some of the issues that you address?
Sure. So Co-Generate, they just changed their name from encore.org. So people might know that organization as that name, but this year they changed it to Co-Generate because they are now focused on bringing generations together to solve problems. And one of the things that I love about that, we've been doing a lot of intergenerational work with the film, where we show the film to older adults and students and get them to learn about each other and over a quarter or a semester. And one of the things that we're doing is combating ageism in both directions, one story and one connection at a time. And I think that's so vitally important, because it's like any other stereotype or ism. When you know somebody from that other group, all of a sudden those stereotypes and isms go away, because you know a person and you know a human being. And it's a completely different experience. But specifically the work that I'm doing for Co-Generate is with a film that I worked on called Forever Voters, where I documented the League of Women Voters going into high schools and talking to high school students about the importance of voting and why their vote really matters, and getting the students to register or pre-register to vote. So in California, you can pre-register when you're 16, and then you're automatically registered when you turn 18. And especially with the presidential election coming up, it's vitally important to get young voters out there. And I love this civic engagement between older adults and students. And for many of those students, they've never had anyone other than their parents or a teacher talk to them about voting. And when you see the League of Women Voters come in there and really care about the issues that they are caring about and listening to them talk about what's important to them. And then when they fill out that form, they're just beaming. They get a little sticker that says, I'm a future voter. And they're so excited about the issues. And I think one of the things that we forget about is that when I watch the film, we look at all the things that happened during World War II, which is predominantly that age group that I interviewed. Yes. And we think, wow, they went through these terrible times. I can't imagine that. But these students are going through their own terrible times. If you think about what's happening to the climate, if you think about school shootings, all these things that they have to deal with that we didn't have to deal with and that the older generation didn't have to deal with. So I think their problems are just as significant. They're just different. And it's lovely to put older adults and students together to be able to have those conversations and to be proactive about what they can do to change the future. And so that's the work that I'm doing with CoGenerate. And there's people that are part of my cohort that are doing work around climate change, around education, all different kinds of ideas in terms of ways to bring generations together to make a better future.
How important. That's such important work. We often think that you learn from your elders or whatever, but I think here is like we can learn so much from the younger generation and the older generation put together. And I never really thought of that, what you mentioned about, yes, people who went through World War II and that those were hard times, but these issues that you mentioned are big, they're huge, and they need to be talked about. And this is climate change, school shootings, everything that mental health, all these things that are happening with young people. It's such a great opportunity to learn both ways. So congratulations for that. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Also, along those lines, you are also a guest lecturer at the Modern Elder Academy, and I've kind of been following them. I think their work is fascinating, and it's one of the things is a navigating midlife program. And so I know we talked a little bit about it, but in your view, the whole concept of ageism through your work and through the films and also through being a lecturer there, what's your opinion on it? Has it improved? Has it evolved? What more needs to be done?
Oh, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, but I do think that things are getting better. I mean, from the time that I started working on the film, which was in 2012, I see a vast improvement even in the media. If you look at shows that are out there, there's many more TV shows that are showing people that are aging in positive and uplifting ways and honest ways. And I think that there's also many more shows that are dealing with intergenerational connections. Like there's a show that I binge watched called Hacks, which was, there's just more of that than I ever remember before. And so I do feel like there is an upside. But that being said, we have a long way to go. And I think that it's really unfortunate. We do live in a very age segregated society. And I think that one of the things that we do is, especially as we have kids that are in school and then college, if you go to college and then you're working, and then nursing homes or assisted living facilities or over 55 communities. And I would like to see an age diverse world where that is more blended, where we have more connection with different age groups. And I was lucky. I grew up in a 4-generational household. My great grandmother was still alive when she lived till I was 19. So I really had 4 generations growing up, and I didn't realize that wasn't, what your own experience is. You don't realize that that's not what everybody else is experiencing when you're a kid. And so I just thought that was normal. And what I realized was that I don't think that most kids that were my age grew up that way. They didn't have an older adult except for their parents in their lives. And so maybe if you don't have a relative, you adopt a relative that's an older adult. And I would like to see more of that cross-generational work happening, because I think that's really the way of the future, where there are more people over the age of 60 than under the age of 18 at this point. And we need to find a way to bring generations together, to stop segregating by age, and to really start thinking about how we all work together and looking at the wisdom of both young and old, because many times younger people can think of new innovative ideas because they haven't been doing something the same way all the time. And yet, there is some institutional wisdom sometimes with people that have been in a job for a long time. And so how do you blend those two things and get the best of those two things together? And I think that's a lot of what MEA is talking about. And there are a lot of other organizations that are also dealing with that at this point as well. And I feel like there is a tide that's turning, which is a good thing.
Yes, I do too. I think I have, obviously a lot more work to do, but I have seen a shift, maybe because I'm in this area. So even in the advertisements, articles and about women 50 over 50, so I think it is changing, but I love that wisdom of both. Are you actually lecturing about this? Like, is this something that you do? Like, is in terms of the
when question? I work with MEA, what we do is we show the film, and then which people can watch the film, and then I do a lecture and a Q&A with people. So that's actually coming up. We're doing another session that's starting in May, and then I'll be lecturing in June. I think the middle of June. So,
so that's in addition to your photography and
everything else. I do a lot.
You're busy.
Yes, I'm busy in my sort of semi-retirement. I like to say that I retired from teaching, but even that I didn't, because I'm teaching part-time this quarter.
Yes.
So but I love everything that I do. I think that I've really made a conscious effort to look at where our time is the most precious gift that we can give is our time. And so I've really made a concerted effort to think about where am I giving that gift to, and what do I actually really want to be doing. And so I enjoy just about everything that I do. I'm really have to say, I look at that very carefully when I'm making my decisions about what I say yes to and what I say no to.
I think you're so blessed that you are enjoying everything you do, because that's really that's what creates happiness in our life, right? And I wish more people did that. Really, really thought about, do I love what I do? And if not, how can I make it? How can I make a change? Or what is it that I really love, and how can I incorporate that into my life? So that's fantastic. So Sky, so what's next? What's in store for you?
Well, I'm working on one of the short films that I did which was called Mochisuki. I'm doing an extended version for PBS, which will air next May for Asian Pacific Islander Month. And it's a film about the Japanese tradition of bringing in the new year by making mochi, which is a beautiful tradition. I think it resonates with me because I grew up in my grandmother's kitchen. And again, when you can bring generations together through food and pass down wisdom as you're preparing food, I love that. I also believe that the more personal, the more universal. And so for me, which you would never know by looking at me, but the personal connection for me was that it was Susie Edo Bauman's family, she was in my Lives Well Lived film. She invited me to come to a Mochisuki ceremony, and it was so beautiful. And I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with all these generations coming together to make mochi. And then my brother is married to a Japanese woman and they have two kids who are Japanese American. And so for me, it's a way to connect to them as well. And so that's why I say the more personal, the more universal. And I believe that will probably be part of a bigger series called Pass the Fork, which will be about these ideas of different cultures that pass down tradition through food. And so this, I'm hoping, will be the first of many. So that's what I'm working on right now.
That just that's wonderful. I mean, when you described the Mochisuki ceremony, I just was thinking also different traditions, different cultures we have so much to learn from them. You were talking earlier about living with your great grandparents or your grandmother. And as an Indian, there's a lot of generations that live together in the same home, right? That's just what's done. I mean, it's not just done as much anymore, but especially in India. So thinking about that, the elders are treated with respect and, with that they're actually looked up to versus not. And so I think this Pass the Fork sounds amazing because food brings us together, right? In all cultures and all generations. So
That's exciting.
Absolutely.
So you said that's
we
coming
all
out in
we all
May?
need to eat, and we all need to eat.
Yes.
And so
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
whenever you can do something around food, everybody gets excited.
Yes, absolutely. So you said that this is coming out in next May?
May of 2024. Yeah.
Nice.
Mhm.
Wow. So you're busy doing that. That's wonderful.
Yes.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
And
So,
I'm writing a book about my experience with the Lives Well Lived film. And also as part of that, because one of the things that I really have enjoyed coming out of it is these intergenerational projects. And so I'm interviewing, because I interviewed 40 people for the Lives Well Lived film, I'm interviewing 40 people and organizations that are doing intergenerational work. And that will be part of the book. So to inspire, hopefully, other people to either become part of those organizations or to start their own, and to think about ways that we can connect generations, whether it's through an intergenerational symphony or co-generational housing or a co-generational theater group, whatever those ways are. There are so many ways that we can connect generations. So hopefully that will inspire people to want to do more of that work.
Wow. Well, maybe we'll have you back when the book is published.
Indeed.
I'd love to learn more about that. I'd love to get involved in something like that. That's fantastic.
Sure.
Well, thank you so much, Sky. It was just such a wonderful pleasure to get to know you and to learn more about your work, and such important work and such a great film. We will have all the links to the film and to what you're doing next in our show notes if anybody wants to reach you or to find out more. But it's been such a pleasure. And I don't know, before we go, do you have anything last things you wanted to say, or?
No, I think just if people want to learn more about what I'm doing, they can go to the Lives Well Lived website, which is just lives-well-lived.com. And please reach out if you have ideas for me or you want to connect. I'm always happy to have an email exchange and share ideas.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, good luck with everything, and congratulations on the film, and good luck with the next one, and on your book, and all that. And you're doing such inspirational and important work. So I'm just so happy to have you share it with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
I trust you enjoyed this interview with Sky Bergman and her insights into how we can and should all strive to live a life well lived. Here are her key takeaways. Number 1, instead of saying why, I would say, why not? And from that moment on, I have always followed my passions. Number 2, let's face it, the one thing we all have in common is that we age every day. We should celebrate our aging. Number 3, your decision should be based on your curiosity over fear. And what is the best that happens if I follow my curiosity? Number 4, I don't let money be the obstacle from doing something. As long as you have enough money to live, then beyond that, it should not be an obstacle. Get creative. Number 5, sometimes it seems like you're up against an obstacle, but how can you make that obstacle a challenge instead? How can we reframe the way that we look at things so that it becomes a joy to work on them rather than a burden? Number 6, there's so many times in our lives when we can't control the things that are happening around us, but what we can control is our attitude about how we deal with those things. Number 7, the 3 things that everyone in the movie had in common was, number 1, everyone had a good support system. Number 2, they all had a sense of purpose, and that can change over time. And number 3, they all had that sense of resilience and positive attitude, and being able to look at the glass as half full rather than half empty. Number 8, many times people reach their 50s and 60s and our sense of purpose has been our jobs, but that doesn't always describe who we are. 9, cross-generational work is a way of the future. There are more people over the age of 60 than under the age of 16. We need to find a way to bring generations together to stop segregating by age and looking at the wisdom of both young and old. And number 10, time is the most precious gift that we can give. Make a concerted effort to ask, where do you want to give that gift to? And what do you want to be doing? Thank you so much for listening.
and sharing the podcast. If you're looking to find your passions and to live a life well lived, and you're wondering what's next, please join me in this transformational group coaching program starting the week of September 18th called It's My Time Now. You will be with a small group of like-minded women to learn from and collaborate with, and with me as your guide. Contact me today with any questions or register with the links in the show notes. Until then, next time, my friend, enjoy the rest of this beautiful summer.